Thanks so much, Rick. Look, no corporation would hold a shareholder vote in which non-shareholders were allowed to vote. When you board a plane, when you get a marriage license, a hunting or a fishing license, you pick up a prescription, you go to the doctor, you do all sorts of things that Americans do every day. You're required to show a form of ID. That does a couple of things. It allows you to prove who you are, because proving who you are, identifying who you are, may determine whether or not you're available to do, you're eligible to do that thing. Whether or not you're the person whose name is on that prescription. Whether or not you're the same person whose name is on the airplane ticket. You have to prove that. It would be insane for us not to have any similar requirement attached to one of our most fundamental activities in our Republican democracy, which is the right to vote. You look at almost every country worldwide, they require some sort of identification in order to do that. Now, what we're talking about here is the identification required in order to cast a vote in a federal election. We as a federal lawmaking body typically don't have authority over state and local elections, but we do have some authority over federal elections. An existing federal law prohibits non-citizen voting. A lot of people, as Rick Scott mentioned, think that's the end of the inquiry. That's no more the end of the inquiry than it would be to say, well, it's already illegal to kill somebody with a gun, therefore we don't need any laws whatsoever regarding, I don't know, your ability to prove your age and identity and your status as a non-felon before buying a gun. That's absurd. Current federal law is made almost impossible to enforce on this front. In other words, when we look at that law, the existing federal law that says you may not, as a non-citizen, vote in a federal election, it's been made very, very difficult by a couple of factors. Number one, in passage in 1993 of the National Voter Registration Act, which allows people in all states, in fact requires states, when you go in to apply for a driver's license, to be offered up a form. Would you like to register to vote? And once that happens, you fill that out. And by checking a box and signing your name, you can, in one fell swoop, apply for a driver's license and register to vote in federal elections. In all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, you can get a driver's license, even if you are a non-citizen. In 19 states, you are able to get a driver's license, even if you are an illegal alien. So in all those circumstances, when you apply for the driver's license, by checking a box and signing your name, you can register to vote. This is exactly why some of these states that have looked at it, like Texas, have found 6,500 non-citizens just through their initial review of some of their voter registration files. I don't even know if they went through all of them. 6,500 non-citizens who were registered to vote, known non-citizens. Of those, nearly a third, 1,930, had previously voted in one or more elections. So this is simply false to say because it's illegal, it can't happen, and in fact, it doesn't happen. That is not true. Now, the need for this is made even more pronounced when you consider the impact of a Supreme Court ruling just a few years ago. A majority opinion issued by Chief Justice John Roberts in a case dealing with an Arizona policy concluded, wrongly in my view, that the 1993 National Voter Registration Act actually precludes the state from asking for any kind of proof of citizenship, even if they know or suspect that the person is a non-citizen, that they cannot ask for anything else. So this is intended to plug that hole. There's an additional consideration here that makes this especially timely, especially necessary now. More than at any other time in American history that I'm familiar with, we have a very large number of non-citizens in this country, an estimated 30 million or so. Of those, we know that we've got at least 10 million or so who have entered illegally into the United States in the last 3.5 years alone. Now, with something approaching 10% of our nation's population consisting of non-citizens, coupled with the Supreme Court ruling, wrongly in my view, interpreting nonetheless, the National Voter Registration Act as precluding the states from asking for that, coupled with the fact that in all 50 states plus D.C., a non-citizen can easily apply for registering to vote while getting a driver's license. and the fact that the state can't ask anything beyond that. The SAVE Act is absolutely necessary. Look, we all know that elections, including and especially presidential elections, tend to be decided within a pretty narrow range. In fact, within a few states, and very often within just a few counties nationwide. And it would be folly for us to leave open this vulnerability. Now, there are those, finally, who will make the argument against this. This is unnecessary for the additional reason that it's too late for it to do any good. Absolute, utter nonsense science fiction fantasy. That is not true that it would do no good. Let me explain briefly why. In 22 states, so nearly half of all voting jurisdictions in America, you are allowed to register to vote up to and including Election Day, same-day voter registration. Therefore, there are a number of people who may not have applied to register to vote so far under the NVRA who could do so up to and including the day of the election. In addition to those 22 states, many other states allow voter registration to continue up until some moment prior to Election Day. And finally, this bill has within it a criminal penalty that would attach to anyone who knowingly registers a non-citizen to vote in a federal election. The combined deterrent effects of these makes this bill not only helpful, but eminently necessary. And the reason we need to attach this to the spending bill has everything to do with the fact that this is the last train leaving the station between now and Election Day. If Americans are going to remain in control of their own government, for heaven's sakes, we should let only Americans vote in our elections. Thank you. Ron Johnson, you're up next.